This is Lucy and Susan Letcher, otherwise known as Isis and Jackrabbit, reading from their Appalachian Trail memoir, The Barefoot Sisters, Southbound. In this podcast, Jackrabbit reads about hiking through Pennsylvania in late fall, where sharp rocks, cold weather, and a mistake with their food supplies set the sisters' tempers on edge.
I lost track of the days we spent in the mountains of Pennsylvania. It was hard to tell where we were from the maps. Aside from gaps where the trail dropped down 1,000 feet or so to cross a river, we followed the flat, featureless tops of ridges just wide enough for a few trees and the occasional clump of brambles. To either side, the valley floor showed between leafless branches. In places, freeways uncoiled at the base of the ridge, cars glinting as they rounded the cloverleaf turns, so distant the sound of their passage hardly reached us. Sometimes we saw red barns and silos standing guard over still green fields and the occasional herd of cows dotting a pasture. After the family from the north got ahead of us, we saw hardly anyone in the woods. Sometimes a family of day hikers or a scout troop passed us, but days would go by without human contact. The incessant wind sighing in the bare trees and rustling the heaps of fallen leaves was our only companion when we stealth camped in tiny clearings beside the trail. Each morning dawned later and colder. Frost often glittered from the trail as we packed up our camp. The rocks continued, sharp, uneven, treacherous stacks that shifted and clattered underfoot, often hidden under drifts of leaves. One day, we came down into the tiny town of Port Clinton, a few houses and 2 bars sandwiched between the Schuylkill River, a railroad yard, and a 4-lane highway. The town was too small to even have a grocery store. The sound of traffic on the freeway reverberated everywhere in the streets. Willows along the riverbank still bore a few yellow leaves, but the grass on the fields in town was nearly all dry and dead. Isis picked up our mail drop while I sat with our packs on the porch of the post office. The lobby of the small building was too cramped to fit both of us and our gear. A shadow fell across the postcard I was writing, and I looked up to see a frail-looking woman in her 70s, wearing a blue house dress and orthopedic shoes. "Are you hiking the trail?" she asked. "Yep." "It runs along those ridges, doesn't it?" She pointed one gnarled finger toward the mountain across the river. The sun was low already, and the highest branches of the bare trees were gilded with its horizontal rays. "Yeah, we came down right there." I pointed out the trailhead across the railroad yard and showed her where the AT switched back down the steep end of the ridge. She looked off into the trees, wistful. "You know, I've lived here all my life. I was here before the highway went in. I've never been up on those ridges, and now I don't think I ever will. Good luck to you, young one." "Thank you," I said gravely. She crossed the street and turned between 2 rows of houses, disappearing from view. I looked back up at the sunlit ridges, and I wanted more than anything to be back there among the trees. I felt trapped, suffocated here among the high houses, the bars, the cracked asphalt, and omnipresent traffic sounds. Isis came out of the post office with our box of food. It didn't take long to pack it into Ziplocs and divide it between our food bags. We had only sent ourselves 3 days' worth of meals. "Where's our next town stop?" I asked. Isis took out the map. "Duncannon," she said. I leaned over her shoulder, looking at the elevation profile along the top of the map. "How far?" She frowned. "It should be right here. I know it's right here at the end of this map. 30 miles. 3 days. "It's not here, though," I said. "Swatara Gap is not Duncannon. Are we missing a map? Wait a second." As the sunlight came through the open map, it illuminated something on the back of the paper. I felt a sinking sensation in my chest. All of the other Pennsylvania maps had been one-sided. It couldn't be, but there it was, the missing section, 35 miles of flat ridgeline, 35 miles for which we had no food. It took a while to realize the full extent of the mess we'd gotten into. "There has to be some place to buy food around here," Isis said. The only business open in town, besides the 2 bars, was a candy store. We spent the last of our cash, they didn't take credit cards, on fudge and chocolate-covered mints, the most caloric-looking things we could find. $13 didn't go very far. Isis asked if there was an ATM in town, but the woman at the counter shook her head with a tight-lipped smile. "We'll think of it as an adventure," Isis said as we headed up the ridge. "We can pretend we're on a quest or something." Over the next few days, she was mostly silent and stoic, bearing her burden. Maybe the quest idea worked for her. As for me, I soon discovered that I would rather hike injured than hike hungry. I became short-tempered and hostile. My powers of concentration failed. I tripped and stumbled constantly, and once the edge of a rock cut the tender skin in the arch of my right foot. The gnawing emptiness in the pit of my stomach was the only thing that occupied my mind for more than a few minutes. A packet of oatmeal in the morning, a handful of crackers at noon, and a meager serving of pasta or potatoes at night hardly touched the surface of my hunger. On the way out of a gap, somewhere between Port Clinton and Duncannon, we got lost. The AT ran along a smooth, grassy track with forests on one side and an old field on the other. A hint of midday warmth lingered in the dry grasses where a few crickets scraped their monotonous, rusty song. "I haven't seen a blaze in ages," Isis said. She took out the map and frowned at it. "I think it turns into the woods soon. Wait, are those blazes up there?" A narrow trail turned off the main track and headed up into the maple and hemlock forest. The trunk of a tall sugar maple bore a few indistinct white marks, just about the right size for AT blazes. We followed the trail for perhaps half an hour. It started out as a narrow but worn track marked with faded blazes. As we proceeded deeper into the woods, it became indistinct, scarcely more than a game trail. The white blazes faded out, and the traces of the trail took a sharp turn uphill. Still, we followed it. The sun had sunk below the next ridge, and the chill seemed to rise out of the lifeless ground. At last, we came to a small stream. There was no sign of a trail on the far bank. It was more than I could take. "What are we doing here? We're hungry, we're cold, we're lost. Fuck this whole damn trail." I sat down by the stream bank, sobbing, pounding my fists into the ground. Dimly at the back of my mind, I was aware that this was not helping our situation.